Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Coffee with Katie. I have my Hawaii mug today. This is obviously from Hawaii. I love the Starbucks Been There mugs because I collect a mug with every place I've been. So today's video is going to be the January book tag. For those of you that don't know, this tag was created by Jan Agaton to just kind of get a little bit of a refresh of a little bit of reading from last year and just looking forward towards the next year. I guess this year that's upon us. So I will link her channel down below, but let's just get into these tag questions. So question number 1 is, what was the last and first, if you remember it, book you read last year? So the last book that I read in 2022 was Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. It was wrapping up the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and I did really enjoy the trilogy as a whole. It was really nice to get that under my belt because it's been a goal of mine for a long time, and I was kind of intimidated by them for a while, but I feel like I shouldn't have been because they were much more engaging and easier to go through than I thought they would be. And the first book that I read in 2022 was As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson, which is actually one of my most disappointing reads of 2022. It was one that I was really sad about because it was the last in a trilogy, and the first 2 books I really enjoyed, and this one just kind of like tanked for me. So it was actually really sad that that was my first read of 2022 because it was just not off to a great start. And then question number 2 is, what was your first read for this year, 2023? And I actually have it right here. That is Beasts and Beauty by Soman Shanani. This is an anthology of a bunch of short stories of different fairy tale retellings. And it's also illustrated, which is really cool, but I'll show you an example. So this is a retelling of like Hansel and Gretel. And it has illustrations in it. And there's several different fairy tale retellings with a twist. And it was actually really enjoyable, and I was very happy that I read this. I had begun to like Soman Shanani because of the School for Good and Evil book that I read, and so I had this on my shelf and wanted to pick it up, and it was just a nice little fun quick read as I was starting my reading year, and I just wanted something kind of light and fun. It wasn't necessarily light, but it was very fun. So if you like darker fairy tales and you just want it to be a short story with a twist, there's also a lot of different representation and diversity in this book. I would definitely recommend it. Question number 3 is, share 3 reading goals you have this year. So one of my goals is to read 80 books again. Last year my goal, I believe, was to read 60 books, and I read 82, and so I'm gonna push the goal up to 80 and hope that I can meet 80 again, if not surpass it, with the goal eventually being to read 100 books in a year, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. I average about 5 books a month. Obviously some months I read more and some months I read less, but trying to read 80 books this year. Another goal is to read all of the books on my 23 books to read in 2023 challenge. So the goal is to complete that challenge to read all 23 of those books, which my video has already gone up for that, so you should know what I'm talking about. But yeah, I really want to get to all of those books. Another goal that I have for myself is to read down more of my owned TBR. I have a habit of buying books, which of course we do, don't we all? And I would say this was more of a problem in the past than it is now. But I would just buy books if they were cheap, if they were like $3 or $4 a piece, $5 a piece, and it sounded even remotely interesting to me, I would pick it up. And it kind of built up my library for a little while, and now I'm at the point where I don't have space, and so I need to get rid of things. And I also want to read the things that are on my shelves to kind of reflect my reading taste on my shelves, instead of just being like, these are a bunch of books that I've never read. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having books you haven't read on your shelves. I do. And I will always have books on my shelf that I haven't read, because I do listen to a lot of books, and sometimes I don't own the ones I listen to. Like, I love A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, but I don't own a copy of it. So I kind of want to change that a little bit to where my shelves reflect my reading taste, and so I would really like to read down my own TBR and then kind of edit that to where I'm getting rid of stuff that I didn't like, I'm keeping stuff I did, and really just kind of tailoring my shelves to my tastes. So with that as being a goal, I also want to work on unhauling books. I've actually started to do that already, as in separating them out and deciding I'm probably gonna get rid of some books, and you will see a video about that in the future when I do my unhaul. And the other thing is another challenge that I will talk about in another video soon, to just kind of make this goal happen. Question number 4 is to share 3 of your most anticipated releases for this year. Obviously, A Curse for True Love by Stephanie Garber. I am always dying to read anything in the Carryovers universe, and this comes out in September, so I'm very excited to read this and cannot wait to get my hands on it. And then, this was supposed to come out last year and it didn't, and now it's coming out in September of this year, The Gentleman's Gambit by Evie Dunmore. This is the 4th and final book in the League for Extraordinary Women series, and I absolutely love love that series. I've talked about it on my channel enough, and I'm sure have annoyed a lot of you, but I really adore that series and how feministic and funny it is, but also how hard-hitting it is. And it's also pretty romantic as being a Regency romance novel. I've just really loved them every time I read them. There's just something about them that really gets me. And the fourth and final book in that series is coming in September, so I'm very, very excited to read it, but also gonna be a little bit sad. It's gonna be bittersweet because I don't want the series to end, but I'm very excited to read it. The next one is not one in a series like the other two have been, and it's actually The Witch King by Martha Wells. I am very excited about this because it's a new fantasy coming from Martha Wells, who wrote the Murderbot Diaries, and while I haven't finished that series, I think she's still writing it. I have absolutely loved that series. I've read 4 of the books at this point, and they're all fantastic, and I'm just very curious to see what she'll do as a fantasy author and with this story of being the Witch King. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know it involves a lot of magic and intrigue, and I just really want to follow this author's works, and I'm curious to see what she writes in this fantasy novel. Question number 5 is, what goals did you reach or not reach last year? So for last year, I didn't read a lot of the series that I wanted to start. I had a list of series I want to start. I didn't get to a lot of those, and there was also a list of series that I wanted to finish. And while I did finish some, I didn't finish as many as I wanted to. Lord of the Rings was a big one for me, so I did get that finished, and I got a couple of others finished, so it's not like I did nothing, but I didn't do as much as I was hoping I would. Goals that I did reach last year, I don't know if I was necessarily trying to do this, like it wasn't necessarily a goal that I had set for myself, but I did really want to read more books as they came out to get reviews up and my thoughts up for people. I did read quite a few new releases, more than I thought I did. I read about, I think it was 29, so about 30 new releases, and was able to get my thoughts on them when I did wrap-ups or when I did reviews. I was really happy with that. And like I said, I did finish the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which was great. It was a big goal for me to make sure I finished that in 2022, and I did, even if I waited till the last second. I also did a couple of monthly challenges where I only read one genre in that month, and I did those challenges. So those were completed, even though there wasn't like a certain number of books or titles I had to read. It was just, you read this genre in this month, and I did that. And I think those challenges were pretty fun and helpful for me getting into a little bit more of my backlists and stuff. Question number 6 is, are there new releases that you've heard about this year but you have no desire to read? Yeah. I'm sure there's more than what I could think of off the top of my head, but Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. Is that her name? I don't know. Day of Fallen Night. I don't know why, but I'm not interested in reading Priory of the Orange Tree. It's probably because I heard that there are dragons in it, but there's not many dragons, and that the plot kind of takes forever, and it's a really long book. But I just don't have any desire to read that book, and therefore I don't have any desire to read A Day of Fallen Night. I don't truly know why I'm not intrigued, because I love dragons, but I think it's because the dragon content is not the main focus, and so I just struggled to care. Another one would be Hellbent, Don't Come For Me. I've never read Ninth House, and I'm not sure I will, at least now. I have pretty much no desire to read Ninth House. The content that I've heard of kind of the trigger warnings and things is not something that I think I will enjoy, and I'm not sure I'll enjoy the story, to be honest. So haven't really been interested in reading that, so I'm definitely not going to read Hellbent, because it's the second book in the series, which is so strange because I really do like Leigh Bardugo. I read all of the books in the Grishaverse and liked them a lot. So it's kind of strange that I'm not interested in reading her adult work, but I think it's just because it's so different. It's very different than what the Grishaverse is. It's not the same. So I just don't really have any desire to read these books. Sorry. Question number 7 is, what are some reading habits you would like to change this year, if any? I would like to, I've mentioned this already, but I would really like to read down more of my own TBR so that more of the books on my shelves, so that I can at least make it, 50-50, because I feel like right now it's very uneven of ones I've read and ones I haven't. It used to be a little bit better, and I've just switched things around, gotten rid of things, done certain stuff, so I would like to read down my own TBR, make a dent in the number. But I would also like to work on physically reading more. I read a lot and I listen to a ton of audiobooks, but I do that because I'm usually moving around, or I'm busy, I'm doing a project, I'm doing something, I'm cleaning, I'm fidgety, so it can be hard for me to just sit down and read. But I really need to get in the habit of it, especially at night before I go to bed, instead of, like watching something on my phone or reading something on my phone. It would just be better if I could physically read something, not only to make progress in books, but also because it's good for you. It's good for your sleep hygiene to read before bed and not have any sort of lights, like blue lights and screens around you. And there's a lot of books that I want to read desperately that I just haven't because I have to physically read them. And I've been busy and not making time to sit down and read. So I really need to do that this year. And I think the underlying goal with that habit would just be to read some pages every day. It doesn't have to be 50, it doesn't have to be 100, but it has to be some. So 10 pages, like I don't care. Just read some every day. Question number 8 is, are there any adaptations you're excited about? Shadow and Bone season 2 comes out in March. I am pumped. Can't wait to get more of the Darkling. Can't wait to get Nikolai on screen. Finally, I am so excited to see that. I loved the first season, regardless of the things that they changed or how they brought in the crows. I loved it. It was such a good time, and I can't wait for season 2. I'm also very excited for Dune Part 2, the movie adaptation. I thought the first movie was very good. I have not read Dune, but I'm very excited to continue the movie. Also, I may be the only one excited about this, but I'm really excited about the movie The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is the Hunger Games film that's based on President Snow's story. I read this book when it came out, and I really liked it, to be honest, and I feel like I was the only one, so I'm very excited to see this on screen. Another 2 that I'll mention, these are not necessarily adaptations, but I'm going to put it out there. I am very excited about the Hogwarts Legacy PlayStation game. I pre-ordered it. I can't wait to play it. While it's not an adaptation, it's set in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, and it's before the events of Harry Potter. It's like in the 1800s, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. And while it's not an adaptation per se, it's set in the same world, and I'm excited. And in that same vein, Jedi Survivor on PlayStation, that PlayStation game is coming out in March. Did I say Hogwarts Legacy is coming out in March? That's coming out in February. Jedi Survivor is coming out in March, and Star Wars did not originate as a book. Star Wars was a movie, but there are lots of Star Wars books. And I'm very excited to follow this. This is following Cal Kestis as he continues the storyline in Jedi Fallen Order, where a few years after, and the Jedi have kind of been eradicated at this point, and I'm very excited to see what we do in this adventure. I loved the first game. It was so good, and I can't wait to play Jedi Survivor. Question number 9 is favorite bookish memory of last year. This one was a little hard for me, but I would just say creating more content for my channel. Like doing the First Line Book Challenge. I thought that was a lot of fun. It was more creative. It wasn't like an idea I came up with, but it was fun, and I got to involve John in that, and that was a good time. I feel like last year I was also doing more work on my content, what I was creating, how I was creating it, putting more time and energy into it, and I would like to continue to do that, but I was excited about my channel last year and getting more traction and doing more things and getting excited about video ideas and figuring out how to execute them. That was a good time for me. I also worked on more content with my Bookstagram, but I'm not as good at that. And also just the books that I was able to read and get lost in, because I love reading and I read a lot of books, but I don't always get lost in them. So the ones that I was getting lost in, those memories are just very fond for me. And the last question, question number 10, is any carryovers from last year that you still plan on finishing? Yes, I'm so ashamed. My pile of shame, as Emily Fox would say. I'm very ashamed about these, that I have them in general, but I would say the main one is Frostblood by Ellie Blake. I have it upstairs by my bed on my nightstand because I'm trying so hard to read that thing, and I love it. I really enjoy it so far, but I just, like I said, I'm really struggling physically reading. I'm just struggling to sit down and do it. I'm struggling with focusing. It's just hard, but when I'm listening to something, I can do it. So I really want to read that book, and I want to finish it, and I am struggling. So that's a carryover from last year, unfortunately. There's a couple other like DNFs, as in I set them down. It wasn't like I'm never going to read this again type of a situation, but there are several that I've set down. I don't have plans to pick them up yet because I think part of the reason I set them down was I just wasn't in the right mindset or mood for it. And so when I am, I will pick them up, but I don't want to force myself to read it and hate it because that's not why you read. I do have a couple, but Frostblood is the main one. So that is all the questions for the book tag. I would love to know your answers to any of these questions if you would like to share them. But as for now, that is it for today's video. So please like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time. Stay safe and caffeinated. Bye.